key. Racism is a system, right? Let's break that down a little bit more. Race and ism. So anytime that you see these three words at the end of any word, excuse me, these three letters at the end of any word, it is signifying system. So racism, sexism, ageism, they're not just talking about prejudice and discrimination. It also includes a system of power. And this is really, really key because if any of you grew up like I did, you also heard terms like reverse racism, right? So again, race is not only prejudice and discrimination based on race, but that's how most of us were raised, socialized, and conditioned. So anytime you saw prejudice and discrimination based on race, we just called it racism, which gave the idea that racism can work in any direction. But the truth is, the ism, those three letters, which means system, means it's not only prejudice and discrimination based on race, but also a system of power. And therefore, folks, there is no such thing as reverse racism. But let's take a time out. Let's unpack that for a moment. So, can I, Jamad Canley, as a Black man, discriminate against Kate Frazier, who is a white woman? Yes. If Kate was applying for a job with our organization, could I be prejudiced against her and not hire her because she's a white woman? Yes. Could Kate go to the Office of Civil Rights and say, I feel I've been discriminated against based on race? Yes. Would they open up a case, investigate? Yes. Could I be found guilty and liable for racial discrimination? Yes. Would it be called racism? No. See, discrimination can happen any direction, but racism can only happen in one direction because it's also talking about the system of power.
Bird's eye view of our history. So we can kind of go through that. So these were some of the slides from last time. Where did the concept of race come from? So Jamad shared that, talked deeper about race and how it's even changed over time. It's not like a set in stone piece, but it's been adapted to meet the needs of white supremacy culture. We went through definitions, the race, racism, again, that system view. You can keep going. Yeah, and this one, if we can go back one. So the conversation that when we broke that down, that often when we talk about racism, again, we go into that naive consciousness, that tunnel vision that this is what racism looks like. And it is. This is racism. And it's bigger than that, right? That's one example, but there's so much more when we're talking about these systems and how things are built. And so just saying that it's white supremacy in this vision is a narrow vision of what racism is. We'll go to the next one. So just kind of broke that down: internalized racism, structural racism, institutional racism, and interpersonal racism. And just, I know we talked about how often we'll say that the education system is broken. And we talked about how really it's working the way that it was designed to work. And when we can see it that way, when we can see that it was designed to get the results that it is, then we can start looking at how to dismantle that and to rebuild that. People are having a hard time hearing me, sorry. Is this better?
Yeah. I think this. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think when, and so often when we have this conversation too, kind of early on when we say the word white privilege, right? People would, it can be a trigger word for some people. When you think about, well, I didn't grow up, I know my running partner took her quite a while in conversations to be able to recognize white privilege, because she grew up in high poverty and really has had a challenging story, a challenging life that she's really worked hard to with resiliency. And so when you say privilege to her, she's like, wait, no. But when we talk about white privilege specifically in these conversations around race, what it's saying is that I'm not saying that my life or that her life was easy, right? I'm just saying that my life is not made harder because of my race, right? It's not because I'm white that I've had to experience additional barriers or challenges, right? Or based off my sexuality or my religion and that. So I know that if that's a trigger word for you, just wanted to let you know that, you know, it's not saying that you've had it easy when we say to hear that word privilege, right?
That belief system started. And that led to some of the structures that we talked about that are going to keep these load-bearing walls in place, like policing. And so, yeah, other countries have police, but in America, in the United States, policing started as slave patrols. It literally came from patrolling to catch any enslaved people who might have escaped. And so the word cop comes from the word coffer, which means to capture. And so literally our police system is a direct descendant of slave patrols. And so again, that load-bearing wall, once you've got a law, now you've got police in place to enforce the law. And the law is that people of color, particularly Black people, Africans that were enslaved, are not humans.
Government institutions were created, when banking was created, when housing, like all of these different things that we're talking about, education systems, they were created during a time when this country still had legalized private slavery. I'm going to say that one more time, legalized private slavery, because when we get into our session next time, we're going to take a look at, did the 13th Amendment actually abolish slavery, or did it just shift it from private to government? So when all these systems were created, again, they were created during this time. Responsible, not my fault. It's just fact, right? So which historical systems have been designed through this lens? You already named a bunch of them. I'm just going to pop these up real fast because we're about to go into our last breakout room. So again, education, legal, law enforcement, financial banking, housing, community design, health systems. Each